Hello again, I'm Larry Hamilton and welcome to my painting channel. Thank you for watching. Today we're going to work on some exercises that I will be using in my upcoming watercolor workshop at the end of July. And I want to just give some very quick, small samples of some paintings of specific objects that you might want to put into a painting when you're doing a landscape. So I'll have some examples of trees and some water and maybe some mountain scene. But these are all little exercises that I take our students through when they start learning how to paint watercolors. And I'll be doing that throughout the month, and I'll be posting this as I get them ready so that the students can watch them before the class. So again, we're using the same student materials that we have in the class, which as you may know if you've watched my last video, we're using paper that's 140-pound cold press paper, and that will be used for all of our exercises and our final paintings. These are watercolor pads that are 9 by 12 inches, and so I have a 9 by 12 inch piece of watercolor paper here, and I have it divided in half, and I'll be doing two types of trees for you today. The brushes we're using are Dick Blick student grade brushes, and they're called Blick Scholastic brushes. I have three flats. I have a 3/4 inch, a 1/2 inch, and a 1/4 inch flat. I have 4 rounds. One is a large number 12 round. We have a number 8 round, a number 4 round brush, and I have a number 4 script liner. And so this is the brushes that every student will use in the class, and we kind of try to standardize it so that everybody has the same materials, the same paints, same paper to work from. It tends to make the learning a little easier, and certainly makes the teaching a little easier, which I'm interested in, of course. The paints we're using are also a student grade paint by Grumbacher called a Grumbacher Academy, and I'll go around the palette very quickly and tell you what they are. We have in this corner, counterclockwise, this is the same palette that each student will have. Holds about 16 or 18 colors, something like that. And we have here, counterclockwise, again, we have Payne's Gray, we have Ivory Black, we have Ultramarine Blue, we have Cobalt Blue and Phthalo Blue. Two greens, I have a Hooker's Green and a Phthalo Green with a blue shade. Then I have 3 earth colors. I have Yellow Ochre, Burnt Sienna, and Raw Sienna. I have 3 reds. One is sort of to the purple side, which is alizarin crimson. One's in the middle, which is a carmine hue, and then one is to the orange side, which is Grumbacher red, or might be cadmium red in some cases. I have 3 yellows, a cadmium yellow, and I have a golden yellow, which is sort of in the middle of the yellow stream, and I have a yellow that's called lemon yellow, which sort of has a green in it. So I have yellows with green in it, yellow with orange in it. I have red with orange in it and red with purple in it. And the blues are the same. I have a blue with a green in it and a blue with purple in it. So those types of colors can make a very complete palette. You shouldn't need many other colors at all to make about any color that you want. So that's what we'll be using. And for the rest of these exercises, I probably won't go through the paints and the brushes. I'll just assume that you know them. So we'll get started today, and what I want to do today is work on a couple of trees that you would find in landscape paintings. One is a tree with really no leaves on it at all, and we'll do that tree, and then I'll move over to the other side of the paper and do one that's full of foliage. So I have one that's without foliage and one with foliage. So without any more talking from me, let's get started. And we'll get to work on this thing. So to start out with this tree with that has no leaves on it, really, no foliage, I'm going to make up a little mixture of burnt sienna, and that'll be one color of the tree. I'm going to make up then also pick a little Payne's Gray and put over here. And so I'll have some grays and some of this burnt sienna. I'll mix a little bit together and get a little bit different color, but basically that's kind of the color that I want for the tree branches. One thing I always like to start out with a tree, I'm going to get my clear water and put in some using my little round brush here, since these are pretty small trees on this paper, I'm going to just wet the right side of this tree. As you can see, this is just clear water, putting it down here into the ground and up part of the tree trunk here on the right side, just enough to get a little water on it to let it start soaking into the paper. So now I have a little bit of wet paper and I have a little bit of dry paper. So how am I going to make a tree out of that? Well, it's very easy to use these paints that I have mixed up here. I can take this burnt sienna and get some in my brush. I'm using the number 8 round brush. Could use the flat brush as well. But just over here on the left side, I'm going to start putting in some of the burnt sienna and letting it run. You see where the water is on the right side? It's starting to run. It starts filling in and making almost a rounded look to this tree. Down here it runs to the bottom. It's going to be lighter on the right because it's mixed with water. On the left side it's going to be a little bit darker. That should tell you that maybe the sun is coming from the left side. So as I go up this tree, I'm just putting in some branches like this. Some of this, as it gets up here, it's dry. It's not. There's no water on the paper, and where there's water, it sort of blends into what's there. So I'm making this all in one stroke. I'm going to come back and get some of this Payne's Gray now in this brush and sort of touch in a few darks in some areas. Let it blend. We're really putting two colors together and just letting them run on the paper. And you can actually see how that makes a very nice looking color for a tree. You don't have to paint the whole thing, but I just want to make some marks in there that make it look like it's darker on the left side. Up here, these are very quick studies, and I'll be using the fine brush, the rigger brush, that I'll be putting in some very fine branches up here. But again, this tree has no other leaves on it. We may throw a few spots of color in there to sort of make it look like a tree with that maybe has a couple of leaves left on it or whatever. But pretty much that's what I want to do for that part of the tree. We kind of let that dry. One thing about trees, whether they have leaves on them or not, they're all shaped sort of like a hand. They come up and the branches spread out. And typically, you would want to make these branches all straight, not curved, not swerving in like that. Some trees have branches that curve in, but most trees that are called deciduous trees, which we have a lot of in North America and other parts of the world, I'm sure, have branches that sort of grow out almost straight, and then they may bend up, but they're mostly straight. So you want to make your branches that way when you make a tree like this. And we want to vary the distance between these so that you don't have duplicate angles. The angle between this branch and that branch is not the same angle as between these two branches. That's what makes interesting paintings. You have an angle here between these branches that's different. That adds variety, that adds interest, and it doesn't look boring. You don't want a tree that just looks like a big blob of paint sitting on a stick. I know some amateur painters will paint like that, but that's not the way we're painting. So I'm going to put a little bit more of this burnt sienna. I've only used two colors, burnt sienna and my Payne's Gray. While this is a little wet in here, I'm going to use a plastic palette knife, actually, and just try to scrape in a few things that look like some curvature of the bark here. And you see that makes a dark mark. It'll either scrape the paint out or it'll leave a dark mark. If the paint is too wet, it leaves a dark mark. If the paint is just about right, it'll scrape the paint out and leave a white mark. So depending on the wetness of the paint on the paper, you'll get either a dark mark, as I have here, or you may get a light mark. But there, I got a light mark right there. The paint was just right at that point that I could scrape the paint out. See that light mark there? It may be a little hard to see, but that's what that is. Okay, so we don't have to do a whole lot more to this tree to show a tree that's in winter. We want to put some grasses on the bottom to sort of ground it to the ground here. most objects need to be grounded. So I'm just wetting some of this base here, and I'm going to just pick up a little bit of, I'll pick up a little yellow, maybe this cad yellow, and throw it in here. Cad yellow and Payne's gray usually makes a nice olive looking color. As you may see coloring here, olive green, I mean to say. And just down here I'm going to use the side of this brush without much water in it, and just sort of put in some side strokes that go up like that, dry it out, get some dry brush in there. All of a sudden we get some things that look like some grasses or whatever. And you don't have to do too much more than that to make it look like it's part of the ground. Put a little bit of this brown down here to sort of tie it together, maybe with the ground darks, something. Basically, we're just making a little vignette type of thing. So all of a sudden I have a tree that's sitting on the ground. Get my rigger brush out now. I'm going to get some of this burnt sienna again and a little bit of this Payne's gray. And I'm going to make some lighter marks with this rigger, which has a long brush on it. And we can just start putting in some more things that look like branches. Try to make them go straight and then up. This, straight, up, like that. Get the brush plenty wet enough. I just made that one curved, which I told you not to do, but if I show you what not to do, then you'll maybe know better than me telling you. Straight. Try to make them as straight as you can, because that's usually the way they grow. Cross them over, make them crisscross. Don't leave openings in here, spaces that are identical. Vary the spaces, vary the width. Make sure we have interesting abstract shapes in between these branches. So that's pretty good right there. Maybe there's a few more pieces of dark material down here in the grass. We'll throw a few things down here. Maybe extend this out a little bit. That's a tree with no leaves on it. We might come back and, as I said, we might want to stick in a little thing or two that looks like it might be a leaf, because it's kind of left over hanging on a branch here and there to add some interest to it, just so it's not totally boring, but you can just kind of touch in some. I just picked up a little orange on here, made myself an orange, something orange like that. Take your brush and sort of splatter some paint, get a lot of wet paint on here and just sort of splatter like this. Maybe some up here like that. All of a sudden you've got a pretty finished painting. We did a tree with no leaves, and it didn't take us more than about, I don't know, a few minutes here. Not even 15 minutes from start to finish. So that's the kind of examples that I'll be doing in class, and that's one of many kinds of trees that you could have. So I'm going to move the camera now slightly to the right and try to pick up this other tree that's going to be a tree with some foliage on it. So I'm going to show you another way to make a tree. Very similar, very fast, but it's going to have some foliage on it. So how do we do that? Well, very similar. I have the sketch already finished. I'm going to sort of wet some of the upper parts of the tree up here where the canopy is. I'm going to wet this, but I'm not going to cover all of it. I'm just going to wet part of it so that there's some areas left that have that are wet. There's some dry areas. So I'm just sort of putting some water in here, wetting this in some areas. I want to wet a little bit of the trunk down here. And this is just clear water. It actually has a little bit of yellow in it, or some of that ochre that I had over here. But the color of that tree is going to be, have some greens. It's the bright, either spring or summer tree. And that's all we want to do for that to start with. So We're going to mix ourselves up some greens now, a little more green than I had here. I'm going to get some more of this yellow, cadmium yellow. And I'm going to mix some blues in it to get a few colors of green. I could use my Hooker's green, but sometimes you can get a lot more flavors of green if you just mix your own. Blue and yellow make green. But I've got 3 blues and I've got 3 yellows. So really I can make all kinds of greens here. Plus I can add my Hooker's green and my phthalo green. And you can see on the palette here I'm getting quite a few different colors of green. If I add my lemon yellow over here, I'll put some lemon yellow. It's going to be probably the brightest greenish yellow. Put some over here and get some, maybe I'll try this 3rd blue. So look at that different green. It's a green that's got more blue in it, phthalo blue and lemon yellow. And I got cobalt blue. So you can kind of mix these up and get the kinds of colors that you feel comfortable with, the kinds of colors you may see in nature. If you're out painting on location, you might be trying to match these. So this paint, this water here has had a little bit of time to dry. I want to take this brush and it's kind of going to do what's called scumbling, which basically you kind of just stick it here and push it. And you leave these really nice loose edges at the top. We're not putting on a ton of paint, but we're leaving where it touches dry paper. We're just letting it get rough texture. That's called rough texture up there. Put some more yellows in. And that's kind of what you see at the edge that tells you, oh, this is a tree. Objects of all kinds tell the viewer what they are by what's at the edges. I can have a blob of just about anything here in the middle, but if I make these edges look like a tree, the viewer is going to say, oh, that's a tree. It's a very, very important concept that you need to understand as an artist, that it's not as important what you paint in the middle. Matter of fact, leaving abstract shapes in the middle are very interesting. But you want to make sure at the edges that you tell the viewer what this thing is. So I'm just laying the side of this brush down, letting it just take off, letting the paper take off whatever it will. I use a similar technique in oil painting. You just lay down the brush and let the canvas, in the case of oils, pull off what it will. So now I have a nice canopy for this tree. I need some branches. Part of it is still wet down here where I put this trunk. So I'm going to come in here and do something like I did on the other tree. Add some of this burnt sienna and come in here and start putting in some branches that sort of go up in here, maybe even let them touch up here like that. Bring it down, add some darks, change the color. Don't keep it all the same color. Make sure that you mix up the colors here. Again, I can have the sun that's sort of shining on the right side, which might make the right side of this tree lighter. Left side will be darker. More Payne's gray over here. There, well, that's a little too dark, but hey, this is a sample. Wet this out. We're going to have some more. We want some shade down here anyway, so this should be darker, right? The bottom, it's the sun shining from this side. Things on the left should be darker. And we should have a shadow under that tree. So we will have a shadow under that tree. A little more blue in here. I'm going to come back into this area where I've got these leaves already and sort of darken, put some darks in here to sort of add a little texture. It's drying out, but I can still get some nice soft edges in here by just pushing this in. Left side of the tree is going to be a little darker than the top. This is where you would expect it to be darker on the inside. Just laying the brush sideways. I haven't painted with the point of this brush at all yet. It's basically all side work. And another little tip that you might want to make note of, most trees are most pleasing if they're built in a 1/3, 2/3 shape. In other words, about 1/3 of the height is here in the trunk and 2/3 is in the top canopy. It's about 1/3, 2/3 here on this other painting as well. So you want to try to use that rule of thirds. There's a rule of thirds in doing composition that many painters know, but there's also sort of a rule of thirds in objects. If you can paint them in such a way that you have 1/3 and 2/3, it makes a much more pleasing painting, finished work, if you do it that way. I'm still using this big number 8 brush. I haven't even brought my rigger out yet, but I'm just putting in some more branches and sort of fine-tuning it. Might get my little palette knife here and scrape in a few things that maybe look like texture, maybe some bark here. Not much, it just takes a little bit. In the base around the bottom, I'm going to put in a few more things that look like there's some grasses growing down here. Just grab some my lemon yellow and stick in some things like this. Put a few strokes over there. So now I have a tree that's got a lot of foliage on it. It really looks like a summer tree. It's designed to be very full at the top. Leave some holes. I got a lot of holes in there for to see the sky. If you had a little blue sky behind this, you could have some nice blue showing through. Putting in some really thin branches now sticking out the top. Stick a few in. This area's wet's not going to show up, but all these other areas that have places for branches to stick out, you can do that. Throw in some things here in the bottom. That's probably all I want to do with this tree. It's really not much to it. Very simple, very fast. Probably no more than 15 minutes on this tree as well. So we've been going here for only about 20 some minutes, and we've got 2 trees completed. So those are examples of objects that we would put in our finished painting somewhere, but the techniques of scumbling when you're putting in foliage and use of a fine rigger to put in fine branches is important to understand, as well as the whole idea of just sort of throwing on some splattering on some paint to give yourself some texture. Many artists do this to just throw in a little texture, and it just makes the painting really sort of pop. So I think I'm going to stop with that, and I'll set up for another demonstration here later, and I will be putting these together as one full video, and you'll be able to watch a series of demonstrations and see probably 2 or 3 finished paintings that we're going to do in the class. So for now, until I see you again on the next demonstration, I'll just say stop for now, and I'll be talking to you soon. So long for now. Bye. Hello again, I'm Larry Hamilton, and welcome back to another painting class on my painting channel. Thank you for watching. We're going to continue with our watercolor classes today that will be part of my watercolor workshop the last week of July. And I have another painting I'm going to do today for you that's going to be a homework assignment actually for our students in this class. And it's a painting that will exercise some of the ability to create a graded wash, and that's part of learning to paint watercolors, is learning to paint graded washes. So this painting is still water is what it's called, and basically it's a simple scene with a couple of areas of graded washes and some background. It's very simple, and hopefully it will be fun to paint and fun to learn. So I'm not going to go over the brushes and paints. I did that last time. So let's just get into the painting. I'll zoom in and let you take a look at the painting here. It has I have a sketch already finished, and see if I can get it lined up so you can actually see it better. Okay, so not like that. Okay, here we go. It's just water in the foreground and some trees and a little mountain headlands in the background. Again, very basic type of painting. So we're going to start today with our 3/4 inch flat brush, and I'm going to just put some water on the top to get started with the first graded wash, which will be the top part of the painting. So just up here on the top, we're going to just put in some clear water right down to the horizon. Try to wet this paper, excuse me, so that we can have some really nice soft edges here. Nice soft background. And this is paper, again, this paper is 9 inches by 12 inches, 140 pound cold pressed paper. It's the paper that we're using for the class, along with our student watercolor paints and our student watercolor brushes from Dick Blick. This 3/4 inch flat is nice for this size paper. It covers a lot of territory, and it's does a good job. So while that's wet and glistening, I'm going to make myself up a little bit of cobalt blue here for the sky. And so I'll get some water in my palette here and get a little mixture of cobalt blue, one of 3 blues on the palette. We have ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, and phthalo blue. And I want to gray that down a little bit. One way to gray it down, instead of using Payne's gray, is you can always add a little burnt umber to this blue, and we will get a nice grayed down color. You can see it mixing here in the palette a little bit. Nice gray with ultramarine, with cobalt blue and burnt umber. So while this is still damp, let's put in some sky up here. It doesn't have to be very plain or very obvious, but I want to put in some places where we got some sky holes around the trees, a little bit of blue in here. It's kind of messy. I'm painting vertically again, as you probably know, which makes it a little bit of a challenge for most watercolor painters. Most watercolor painters paint in a horizontal mode, so they don't have runs like we're getting here, but that's okay. These runs will add some interest to the painting. So there you go. That's pretty much the sky. We're 2 or 3 minutes and we got a sky in here. Put a little darker here at the corner just to sort of let it blend. While that paint's wet and while that paper's wet, you can let these blend together and get some nice effects. Okay, I'm going to paint in this little mountain in the background. I'm going to add a little red to that. I'll probably use a alizarin to make this little, it's not really a mountain as much as it is just another piece of land sort of in the distance, but I want it to be darker than the sky, and I want it to be a little bit drier right in here. See it running nicely all over the place. I'm going to dry this off with my paper towel here at the bottom. If you dry the paper a little bit, it will actually stop the paint from running beyond where the paper is dry. So we're just going to touch in some of this sort of purple color, lavender color, whatever you want to call it, just to make it look different than the background. So something like that. We have a nice little backdrop. So we have a sky, we have a backdrop. How about some trees over here and some in the background we're going to have a series of colors for trees. Make myself up some interesting colors using my cad yellow, and I'm using some burnt sienna over here. I'm going to throw just a little bit of blue in it. I'm going to use that same cobalt blue, just stick with that, and see if we can get a interesting color here for this set of trees up here, like this. They're kind of soft and going into the sky. Add a little more blue to get some green out of that. Scumble with the edge of the brush. Maybe even try a little hooker's green to get some specific green color in there. There we go. So I'm just putting in a bank of trees here in the distance. You can't really tell much what they are. But if you look at the edge, one of the things that we talked about in previous videos, the edge tells the viewer what that thing is back there. So if you can just touch using the edge of the brush, put in some things that look like pine trees or pine branches, pine needles. I'm just adding some blue to this mix I had here, just still using cobalt blue. Over here, this is going to be another little pine tree. Using this big old 3/4 inch brush, I'll put a little Payne's gray in there to darken up a little bit at the bottom. Put some darks over here. And as it moves down into the ground area, I'm going to go back and get me some more of this burnt sienna. And just start putting in some ground cover here. This is some of the bank that these trees set in. I don't want that to be all one color, so let's mix it up. Let's get some other color over here. Something like that. Leave some rough edge down here at the bottom where it touches the water. We're going to have water below this, so we'll leave some water there. Maybe put in some things that look like some trees standing over here. That's a little too wet to do that right now. But basically this is the, I should call this the background. I'm going to put a little of this lavender color in there just to mix up some of the colors. There we go. Gives a nice little look to it. While we're there, let's see if we can scrape in maybe some trees in this area. As it starts to dry off a little bit, some of the glisten is gone. It means the paint is starting to dry. I'm going to use this plastic palette knife and just see if we can scrape in some things that look like there might be some trees here sort of in this woods. If the paint is too wet, it'll make a dark mark. If the paint is just right, it'll make a white mark where it actually squeegees out. The term is squeegeeing out the paint. So it leaves a nice looking tree that has white bark. Might not be white, might be stained with a little bit from underneath it, but the paper's stained a little bit with the other paints that are on there, but still leaves a nice, interesting look. Now, let's see if we can put in a few more darks here. I want to get some other trees that are sort of standing here alone. I'm going to use some Payne's gray with this mixture of yellow and burnt sienna that I have on the palette to darken it up and see what we can do, like right in maybe here. I'm going to use using the 1/2 inch flat. Just put in some vertical streaks like this. Take the corner, touch, and you make it look like there's some, these are some trees that are dead or lost all their branches, but it really adds some interest to the painting when you add things like this in. And I'm painting over this paint that's still a little bit wet, but it's pretty much dried everywhere. But if you leave the bottom soft, you'll actually blend it into whatever's on the paper. Maybe this, I put a little bit of darks in here, like that. Darken this up a little bit to kind of indicate some shadows here and there. Maybe over here we've got some shadows that come down to the bank. Outline some rocks along the bank. There we go. Leave some rough edges here because I'm going to make the water come up against that. One more tree. I started trying to make a tree here when it was too wet, so I'm going to come back close to that and see if I can put another thing that looks like a big tree just sort of sticking up here. Okay, soften the bottom, soften these edges. You want to make sure that we have soft edges everywhere back here. Okay, can be some rough edges, but there, this gives some nice texture. All right, this little mountain in the distance needs to be a little darker, so I'm going to pick up a little more my cobalt blue, a little more alizarin, get a darker color of purple here, a little less paint in it, and see if I can sort of give this a little texture back here to make it look like there's more than just one flat looking mass back here. So by just mixing this in with the what's there, all of a sudden I've got something a little more interesting back there in the distance. All right, so that's the top. We used our wet on wet technique here. Used a sort of a graded wash for the sky. Started to put in the this little hill here in the distance. I want it to be softer. So I'm just taking a wet damp brush and sort of wetting the top of this to pick up some paint and soften that edge so I don't have a sharp edge back there. If you have a sharp edge back here, it brings that forward. So as you come forward, things should get sharper and more distinct in color, but in the distance they should be soft. Okay, so that's going to do that. Now, the bottom of this is still nice and dry, so we're going to put in another graded wash, and it's going to be in the foreground, and this is the water area. So I'm going to use my 3/4 inch brush again, and I've cleaned it out. I'm just going to start putting in some more water down here. I'm going to leave a little gap under this land area back here so I don't get running of those colors. I do want to put some of those colors down into this water as reflections. When this is still water, it's not going to have a lot of ripples in it, so we're going to be able to put in some nice reflections. So in this case, we're going to do a graded wash, and it's going to be going to start light in the distance and get darker as it comes forward. So as we start back here, we're going to start with our blues. I'm going to pull out this cobalt blue again, start a new wash, a clean wash of it, and we're going to start in the distance with a light wash and then bring it forward, and as it comes forward we'll make it darker with putting more paint in it. So back here I want to have a little bit of this lavender color back here if I can. So we're starting, come forward. And by just continuing to come forward, we can make it darker by adding more paint. Adding more paint, a little less water. So we have water on the paper already, so it's going to blend together nicely, but we want to have a darker look in the foreground, so it's lighter in the back, lighter in the distance, and darker as we come forward. Got some streaks of paint there that I don't want. pick up more paint, less water, and make it a much darker color in the foreground. So this is a graded wash that goes from light in the distance to darker in the foreground. And because we wet the paper, we have some nice blending going on here without doing a lot of work. So you should be able to see that that is a lot lighter in the distance, which would reflect the sky, and as it comes forward, it gets darker. So we've been on this only a few minutes, 15 to 20 minutes right now, and we have a lot of it finished. I'm going to use this brush now. It's called a thirsty brush. I'm going to take it and dry out the paint and dry out the water, clean it out and dry it out. And then in here, in some areas, I'm going to just lift out by taking the brush like this. Streaks, it pulls up some paint because the brush is dry and the paper is a little wet. Down here, I'm going to pull out a streak. Lift it. It's called lifting. We're lifting paint off of the paper with a damp brush. The brush is not very wet. If the brush were too wet, it would make it blossom. And that's not what we want. We want to lift up the paint that's there. A couple more back here if it works. It may be a little too dry back here. I don't know, but there we go. Okay. So you don't want to do a lot of this, but just enough to give it some horizontal motion. So that is our foreground. And we're not done yet. We're going to put some reflections in. We're going to have to wet a little bit of this again. This is drying up a little bit. We want these trees to reflect down into the water. And the thing that tells the viewer that you have water is vertical strokes, vertical reflections. So we want to use our colors that are in the background, or in this set of trees that are on the bank, and we want to pull them down. Now I don't know, it may not be wet enough, but let me try it and see. These need to be that color. Give myself a little of the greens here. Okay. Take a little drier brush and just pulling down here, sort of blend it. The brush is fairly dry. Come up and mix it together. This front edge needs to be soft, so we can actually start in the water area here and pull back, and it will soften these edges. I probably should have wet the paper down a little bit more before I started these vertical streaks, but I didn't. So the only way to fix that is to come back and take wet water and pull into it, dry the brush, wet water, pull up into it, dry the brush. Because if I come back down again, I'll bring more of that paint down in there, which I don't want. So I want this to run this way. See, I just brought the yellow over here by mistake. Show you what not to do. Over here, we've got still a little more. You pull down like this. Okay, that's close to what I want. It's not perfect, but a better way to have done that would have been to actually wet this area slightly, because it was a little bit too dry to put the reflections and let them keep a soft edge. But we're still getting some nice reflections. I'm going to go back, and to make the reflections look a little more accurate, I'm going to put a little more of this bright yellow up here. to make it stand out. And wouldn't have to do this, but I'm just sort of trying to make it a little more realistic. Okay, now it's starting to look more like a real reflection would look. And what else do we need to do here? Not a whole lot. This area here, blend it out. Maybe it needs to be a little browner, I guess. Yeah, something like that. We'll leave some streaks across there, leave some gaps. Then we can come back with our rigger or script liner. Sometimes they're called a script liner, sometimes they're called a rigger, but they're basically this brush that has the long bristles on it. And we're going to load it up with some dark paint. We'll get a little more of this burnt sienna here, and get it darker with put a little bit of Payne's gray in it. It gives a kind of, sometimes it's a funny looking color when you mix Payne's gray, but it also gives a very dark color. So I just want to go back and restate a few of these trees back here. Put a few more things in like that. A couple of things over here. The technique I want to show you, and I don't know if I can do it with this palette knife or not, but we're going to try it. If it works, fine. If it doesn't, you'll have learned something. I'm taking the palette knife and sort of getting some paint on the edge of this palette knife. This is not a typical watercolor tool. I'm going to put a horizontal streak in here, like that. I did get some paint on there. That did work. Okay. Sometimes there's experimentation going on here that I learn from, you learn from. We all paint to learn how to paint. So I keep painting and I learn something all the time. So I'll put a couple streaks in here with this palette knife. I could use a sharp razor blade. I could use a knife. But just to put something horizontal through these areas where we have reflections, it helps enhance the reflection and make it look more real, I guess. Something like that. All right, that's enough of that. Let's go, while we got this brush, let's see if we can put in some foreground colors here. I want to put in a little bit of grasses in the foreground, sort of a green, olive green color, something like that. Olive green, yellow ochre, and Payne's gray, making it a very good olive green. I have more brown in this, I think, than I want. But let me take our script liner again and just come down here in the foreground and start putting in some reeds and weeds, that type of thing. Get some more blue in there. It'll green it up. Come on, blue, where are you? There we go. Needs to be dry, more dry brush. Like that, yeah. We'll have come up like this, and we'll come back and put a little top on it to make it look like, yeah, something like that. Do another one of those over here. Something like that. Over here, maybe a bit too much. Pick it up. Too wet. The challenge is painting vertically here. So I will get more runs than the typical painter might, but that's good. We got a few more out here like this. So that's plenty right there. It shows we have some foreground here that's, so we are on a bank looking across this water, and has a nice little interesting 2 graded washes and some reflections, a little mountain type in the background, low mountain if you want to call it that. And I think I'm going to stop, otherwise I'll mess it up. Put a little more rough texture back here if I can get it in. There we go. Just taking this brush sideways and pushing. It helps a rough texture, which kind of indicates the bank or rocks and stuff along the edge of this water. Very nice. Okay. I think this little guy could have a little better top on him here. Okay. You gotta know when to stop. You gotta tell yourself to stop. Usually I have students in my class yell out, stop, when it's time. Right now I'm touching in a little hooker's green in here to green this up a little bit. These are some green reeds and that sort of thing. Don't want to make it too messy over here because I really want this to be the focal point. This is sort of just balancing all of this over here. You put a little interest over here on the left side to balance it. But if you get too much detail and too much interest over here, they'll take the viewer's eye over here. We want the viewer's eye up in this area. Okay, I think that is what I wanted to show you on this particular one. And hope you can give this a try. And hope you keep painting, and I will have more paintings coming online here shortly as we get ready for our class in the end of July. And these will be some of the paintings we'll be doing in our class, or they will be assigned as homework. So until I see you again, keep painting and have fun. Thank you. Goodbye. Hello again. I'm Larry Hamilton and welcome to my painting channel. We're going to do another lesson today that will be part of my watercolor workshop that's coming up the end of July. This is a fairly simple landscape that I hope everybody can do. It's not very complicated. We're doing it again on 9 by 12 inch 140 pound cold press watercolor paper. And I won't go over the brushes or the paints because I'm going to done that once already, so I'll leave it for later. But I have a sketch on here that you might be able to see a little bit. I've just made a few marks to show where some of the waves are and some of the clouds. So I'll get this thing zoomed in about the right distance so you can see as much as I can possibly show you. And we'll get this thing going. Okay, so today we're doing a seascape that's got a lot of blue in it. The blue I'm using primarily is going to be phthalo blue, and almost exclusively phthalo blue. I may put a little green in it to make it get a little ocean color, but pretty much the blue is all phthalo. So I'm going to start out wet on dry right now. No wetting of the paper to start with. I've got my 1/2 inch flat brush here, and I've got it loaded with a bunch of phthalo blue. We're going to start painting the horizon. I actually have a little horizontal line sketched here so I can keep a nice flat horizon. When I paint like this from the side, I'm painting vertically, as you probably know, which is again unusual for watercolor painters because the paint tends to run. But when I paint from the side like this, I have trouble keeping things horizontal. So I gave myself a little bit of a line as a guide, so it'll at least keep that pretty close to horizontal, best I can. And then I'm going to start around the top of this wave. This is the first wave. I'm going to just make a slight connection here, rough edge, bumpy, sort of a melodic line. You may have heard me speak about melodic lines. These are lines that the eye follows that you want to make them go up and down, different widths, different heights. I'm painting the top of this wave right now, and I'm painting the rest of the water out here to the right. Okay. So that's what I want on top of the wave. So that's the far distance of this water. And now I'm going to come in underneath. I want to make sure I have a little bit of softness here so I can blend this later. I don't want this to be a hard edge in there, so I'm just going to blend it right now because I'm not going to paint all of this. I'm going to come back over it but I want to put in a very, very dark, really dark, less water, more paint underneath here. So now I'm painting what's underneath this wave. And as I get down here, I'm going to be painting the top of the next wave and underneath this wave as well. So I want to keep this very dark, as dark as I can make it. And I'll go back over it probably and hit it again. I'm just using this flat brush, kind of pushing up, pulling sideways, trying to make some nice, interesting textures both on the bottom of this wave that's in the distance further back and the top of the wave that's going to be in front of it. So I'm just touching very lightly. As the paint runs out of, the brush runs out of water, it gets a sort of a rough edge. You see when I go like that, you see that nice, beautiful look there. That's called a rough texture, a rough edge if it's on the edge of something, but it's pretty much a rough texture. I don't really want all rough texture in there, but I do want some change of color. Even though I've got one color going here, I'm going to try to make it blend together a little bit. Something like that. It's darker here. You see I have a big vertical line there that I don't really want. It doesn't lend itself to this, so I'm going to sort of blend it if I can. Okay, something like that. Little streaks across here indicate something happening in the distance. Okay, so keep going. That is one wave already painted. The top of the next wave is painted. But I'm going to go back and put just a little more paint in some of these areas to darken it up a little bit. Like that. Plenty of phthalo blue here. Get it dark. And down here I want to come across and start painting the bottom of this wave. So hopefully this is looking like a nice wave with some dark blue in it. I want to gray it down a little bit. Maybe I'm going to put just a touch of green in it to try to get a little more color in here in some spots. I'm just sort of blending this back into what's above it. Okay, I want to get some gray in there, so I'm going to pull a little bit of burnt umber into this blue and see if I can get a gray out of this. Not as gray as I want it, but see, it's turning a little too brown maybe. All right, let's add a little bit of Payne's gray. We'll get a nice blue gray out of this. As I come into here, that's a little too dark. Wow, way too dark. But we can use the water and the brush and sort of blend it. What I'm painting now is this water that's sort of around this. As the water comes into the foreground, it sort of changes color. It starts picking up different colors around it. Some of the beach underneath, if you want to call it that. Okay. Lighten it up a little bit here, get a little more water in it. More Payne's gray, maybe some something like this. Okay. It's looking a little bit like a Seascape, hopefully. Pick up a little yellow ochre and see if I can get some of that color. Usually as water gets toward the foreground, anything that's under the water tends to take on something of an ochre look for some reason. Get a little bit of green out of this, getting some, adding that yellow ochre is giving me some olive color that really helps look like there's the ocean color, and then as it comes more forward we'll start getting more of the brown in here. Yeah. So that's put some more stuff over here after a bit, but right now that's pretty much what I want to do. Over here I'm going to have a little brown, mix it in. Okay, let's take a step back and take a look. So we've got everything from the horizon to the foreground pretty well done. We're going to put a little more, some reflections in that little water that's coming toward us here. I'm going to leave some of this alone and just put in a few more marks up here. So these horizontal marks all tell the viewer that this is water that's kind of coming toward us. I think maybe I'll stop on that right now and just look at it for a minute and see if there's anything else I can do. Probably could come in and put some more darks in there underneath those waves. Go back and get me some clean phthalo blue. Put it in another well over here so I don't get polluted with that other color that's I mixed up for the foreground. Just pure phthalo blue, 1/2 inch flat brush, nothing else so far. And in here I'm going to come back and put another little layer of really dark blue. This is the same blue I'm going to use for the sky, by the way. So we're making sort of shadows and whatever that wave is casting on the water. Horizontal strokes. A little more blue over here. Okay. All right, that's gonna do it out there, I think. Okay, I think that's mostly what I want to do at this stage. We've spent only about 12 or 13 minutes on this so far, and we've pretty much got the foreground, I'd say 90% done. I'm going to put a few sand dunes here and some reeds and things sticking up, but pretty much that's what I want to do there. In the sky, we're going to use, I'm going to wet the sky, and we're going to put in some close clouds, low down clouds that sort of have a, I guess a Payne's gray with a little alizarin. So I think I'll make a mixture of that now while I've got this brush going here. Put some more Payne's gray in the palette and come back and get a little alizarin crimson put in there. And that color will be the basis for our clouds. It's going to have to be lighter than that, of course, but we do that with water. So and I want it to be fairly soft, so I'm going to grab my 3/4 inch flat I'm going to start with the water. I'm going to leave about 1/8 of an inch above the horizon. I want a gap there. I don't want this water from the sky to run down into the ocean. So by leaving a gap, if you can see where the brush is above that blue horizon line, I'm leaving about 1/8 of an inch gap. That will stop any water from running unless it's too heavy, too strong. If I have a lot of water, of course, it will run because I'm painting vertically. If you're painting this horizontally, it will be a lot easier. In the class that I'll be teaching, the students will be doing this on a horizontal desk, but I'll be doing it vertically again, so I'm going to have to see how this works. This is my first test to try this, to see if it really stops the water from getting down into the ocean, where you want water in the ocean, but not when you're painting a watercolor. You want to have some nice sky. Okay, so that's the start of the sky. I'm going to grab a little bit of this mixture I made with Payne's Gray, a little bit of alizarin. I'm going to put some diagonal streaks in here. Look like sort of clouds off in the distance in there. They're basically going to run vertically. You see some interesting things happening because I'm painting this vertically already. You have things that look like there's maybe water dripping down, maybe too much water. Because I have this gap here of dry paper, it won't go beyond that gap. It may drip down a little bit, but it won't go beyond that gap unless I get it too wet, and then nothing's going to keep it from running down. A little darker in here. See if I can get a little more Payne's Gray to darken some of this up. These are kind of like rain clouds out here. Many times in these types of scenes you have clouds that are maybe putting some rain down, but you have blue sky above even. So we're going to have something that looks like rain clouds out there. And this area here, I'm going to let it bleed down and get close to the water, because I'm going to actually let some rain show out of that. So that's enough of that. Let's go up here and see if we can get some more of this phthalo blue now. I'm going to use this bigger brush with phthalo blue, and I'm going to start loading in some colors and paint around the clouds in the distance. So up here, I'm using kind of the side of this just to see if it's how it looks. What I'm doing is I'm painting the sky behind the clouds. Okay, so I'm going to have a cloud in here, and I'm going to have another cloud going across the whole paper. If I get enough of this phthalo blue paint, I see a little bit of water there that would like to run down the paper. Hopefully it's going to stay where it is. Up here, we're going to put in some more phthalo blue. Across here like this. Bring it down, let the brush sort of rough edge into the top of these clouds. Okay, so I don't want to have a rectangle around a cloud. They rarely have rectangles in them, or squares. Usually tend to have round and puffiness. These kind of clouds anyway have a roundedness to them. But you're painting with a square brush, so sometimes you end up with some very angular looking marks on the paper that may not look like a cloud. Okay, so I've got that behind here. Let me come back and I'm going to keep loading this in because it needs to be very, very dark. There's a little bit of blue that kind of comes across here that sort of goes below these clouds. It sort of mixes with the clouds below. Something like that. Lighten it up, get a little more water here. Let's see, this sort of mix this together and get some of this gray in there, if I can. Too dark. Too dark, too dark. More water. Lighten it up. Come across here like this. So I'm getting some interesting combinations of colors going across the sky here. This could be gray. See what that looks like. Step back and take a look. Okay, yes. So these are nice thunder-looking clouds, like they would be out there in the heat of the day and build up some heat, and then all of a sudden you've got rain coming out of it, hitting on in the distance. But I'm going to actually make this darker. I'm going to let it dry just a little bit. Maybe put a little more in here, see what this does for me. So I've only used about 3 colors here: phthalo blue, Payne's gray, alizarin, okay. Now let's see if I can do some more phthalo blue here. Pick up a little of that alizarin maybe for this area. If I got any alizarin in there, let's see. Yeah, we'll warm it up a little bit. There we go. Okay. Pull this down just a little. All of a sudden we've got some rain in the distance. Soften it up a little bit, softer edge, pull it right down close to that water. Suddenly we have a rainstorm in the distance. Okay, getting some drama in that sky. I'm going to go back now as this is starting to dry off a little bit. I'll come back and give me some more phthalo blue and darken the top of that and see if I can get it even darker. Darker blue, still just phthalo blue. Now I'm using a 3/4 inch flat. I've only used 2 brushes so far, 3/4 inch flat and a 1/2 inch flat. Only used about 4 colors, very limited palette. Up here, I'm going to come in and see if I can put another layer of dark up here. Sort of blends in and lets this look like there's a couple levels of clouds there. Same thing over here, if I can get some more blue that's darker at the top. Just more paint in the brush, less water. So it's leaving, as it's softening off there, it's leaving sort of 2 layers, a really darker layer, a lighter layer, and then the white clouds themselves. And it's kind of look I'm trying to achieve here with this. Pick up maybe now a little bit of this. And here we can actually lighten some of this by picking up some, if I have a dry brush, so I wet it, wash it out, and get it dry, and while it's wet, try to pick up some of this in here and sort of blend it together. So I don't have a hard edge. I don't want to have a hard edge in the middle of this cloud. But I do want it to look like it's all part of the same. It's not a cloud, I'm sorry, the sky. As part of the sky, I don't want to have hard edges. The sky would not have hard edges. It would be all the sort of a blended, graded wash. Something like that. That may look better on camera than it does in real life, but basically that's the idea with those clouds. I'm going to put in a few shadows in those clouds to kind of warm them up and give them a little bit of definition, a little more definition than they have right now. See if I can use a little of this lavender color I have that's got some Payne's gray in it. See, actually, I probably need to wet that. Those things need to be soft, so I need to have some water in there. That paper is now dry. 140-pound paper dries out fairly quickly. So right along the bottom of this, I'm going to have some areas that are sort of, give me some definition of shape. So I'm just putting some clear water. Not exactly clear. It's got a little bit of gray tone in it from the water, from what was in the brush, which is okay. And I'll just see if I can sort of put in some soft, sort of like shadows, if you will. These clouds are puffy white, but do have some shadows in them. So kind of make them look more rounded. So that's really kind of what I want to do there, like this. See what happens over here. Kind of smooth that out a little bit. Okay, that's giving me sort of the look. I've got some melodic lines here. They're not straight, they're not angular. I don't have any circles or squares or anything in there that would make it look man-made. I do want to keep those edges soft if I can, as much as possible. Okay, let's stop on that. Now let's go back, and we got a couple more things to do in the foreground, and we'll be pretty well done. I'm going to put in just a little bit of reflection in here, in this water area here. Some vertical streaks will sort of give us a reflection of the sky. Something like that is enough. Maybe just a little reflection in some of these waves even to sort of gray them down so they're not all perfectly white. Okay, little shadows under there. Now, let's go back and see if I can get some more of this brown. I'm going to pull up some burnt sienna. Maybe put a little yellow ochre in it to warm it, to change its tone a little bit, to yellow it up a little more, I guess. And then down here on this area, I want to have some sort of like sand dune type sand dunes here. That'll lighten up a little bit as it dries. So here we got some more that's going to go on this side. Just sort of using the brush, push, pull, push it in. I'm going to put some reeds on top of it. Grasses and whatever might be out here. Sort of soften some of that so it's not really a hard edge, but it can be a hard edge actually if I want some things that look like rock in here. Put in some darks here and there. Use my Payne's gray blue mixture that I have. Just throw in some of this sort of stuff. Okay, that's going to do that part of the foreground. Now I just want to put in some simple reeds that stick up, and I think we'll have it done. Again, this is a fairly dramatic sky. It's got some low clouds, low hanging clouds, some big bright clouds in the distance, and has some interesting foreground shapes. But primarily, it's very, very simple, a simple seascape. I'm going to get my rigger out now. My rigger is this brush that's got a long tip on it, and I'm going to pick up some yellow ochre and give myself a chance to put in get a full brush. I want to have this thing with a lot of paint in it. This yellow ochre is going to be so the brush has a lot of paint. I'm just going to come in here and sort of put in some things that look like reeds that stick up here. They have little tops on them sometimes. Maybe mix a little color, darken it up a little bit in some spots. Something like that. Maybe there's a 2 or 3 over here like this. Stick up. Put a little dark tip on them. These are like, you usually see something like this, sea oats or something it's called, maybe around the beaches. Put some dark in around the bottom maybe to sort of let it blend together so they don't look like they're glued on, that they have something they're growing out of in this foreground. Okay. Pick myself up a few more streaks of a little different color here to pull some of this lavender down in here. Okay. I can keep doing this for hours, which I don't want to do, but I do want to make it look like there's something in each corner. What else can I do here? That's pretty much what I want to do. I think the corner could be just a little darker in some spots. The sky looks okay. I'm going to stop on this and sort of leave it and see if I may find something I want to do to it later a little bit, but primarily I'm going to just sort of leave it. Maybe another little color here that sort of shows some green coming through. Don't want to leave that too sharp over here. There we go. Okay. All right. So it changes the color from a blue to sort of a grassy color in the foreground. Big skies, little waves, and I think with that, I'm going to say we've gone just about a few minutes here, more than we expected to go. 30 minutes. Yeah, that's not bad for a 30-minute painting. So I'll leave that as another lesson here that everybody will be doing in the class, and hopefully you had a chance to watch this if you like it. Keep painting, keep having fun, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. So long.